It's a mess at Northwestern, and a lot of this will be worked out in the courts. A couple of lawsuits have been filed. I just heard Nick talking about former Northwestern football players filing lawsuits in this hazing situation. And here to talk about it are two of the attorneys involved, Patrick Salvi and Parker Stinar. I don't want to hang up on either of these guys, and you know I'm ham-handed with this. So give me Mr. Salvi first. I think I hold the record for accidentally hanging up on guests.
The most.
Patrick Salvi, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being on. I know you and I have talked in the past about various things, but I appreciate you doing this. And Parker Stinar is with us as well. The law firm is called what, Patrick?
Our law firm, Salvi, Shostak, and Pritchard.
All right. So we've seen allusions to what some of these players went through just by category. I don't think I'm overstating this when I say sexual abuse and racism. Did I miss anything?
I think you can add to that hazing, sexual harassment, and in certain instances, sexual assault, whether it was perpetrated by a fellow athlete or others within the Northwestern organization, whether it be higher-ups, administrators, coaches, prominent alumni, things of that nature. So this was very widespread. I've been somewhat shocked by what I've learned from clients and other folks that have come forward to talk to us. So,
Parker Stinar, it's difficult to talk about this in specifics because this is an active case, obviously, and I know you know well what to say and what not to say, so I don't mean to take you down a road you can't go down, but for the sake of the public understanding, there are some folks who would just go, it's sports, tough it out. We're not talking about that, are we?
Attitude is very, very sad and unfortunately leads to these events continuing on for future generations. I represented survivors of Nassar at Michigan State University, survivors of Dr. Robert Anderson at University of Michigan. And at the start of the case, I heard a lot of those same criticisms that really how bad is it? What was the conduct, especially with Dr. Anderson with University of Michigan, where I represented over 100 University of Michigan football players. The mentality at the start of the case within the public was these are big, strong, tough football players. How big of a deal is this? And that, unfortunately, is a disgusting mindset. And speaking with these individuals, having represented them, the traumas that they sustain, whether it's racial discrimination, sexual assault, sexual abuse, or hazing, can have a lifelong traumatic impact on them, affecting relationships, employment, self-worth, self-harm, addiction, and things along those lines. So for those people that have that mentality, I think it's unbelievably unfortunate. And for me having children, for Pat having children, our goal is to bring awareness to this and institute change.
I think all that you're doing is great. And you talked about the long-term traumatic effects it may have on that person. And another question I think comes up a lot as this whole thing is unfolding and all the layers are being pulled away is why didn't one of the players say stop, and why didn't they say something ahead of time? Because of this long-term traumatic effects it's having on each of these individuals. And now look how far it's gone.
Sure. Well, I think it goes in two different directions there. On the one hand, you have athletes that have gone to college. So they're 17, 18, 19 years old. They go to college for the first time. They're going to be varsity athletes at Northwestern University. So think about that for a moment. They're going to be able to
Patrick, your phone's fritzing. I don't know if you moved anywhere, but if you get back to position A, perfect, right there. That's it.
Is that a little better?
That's
yes,
perfect.
That's
you. Perfect. Now we can hear you.
Okay, great. So these student athletes have gone to Northwestern, an outstanding academic institution, to be varsity athletes at a Big Ten college. I mean, that is a big deal. And so when something like this happens, do you ruffle feathers? Do you compromise your playing time? Do you compromise your status on the team, your scholarship? Because we have heard stories that for people that did speak out, they were benched, they had their scholarships revoked. They ultimately were so disgruntled that they transferred, and that, of course, isn't the best look on a resume, and so they had to make that very difficult decision after first being informed, and their parents being informed, that they were going to a safe place where they were going to flourish as athletes and as students, and to have an amazing degree on which they could fall back on for the rest of their lives. And so it's not as easy as, well, just speak up, because even those that did frequently were suppressed. And so whether it went one way or the other, it's a very difficult situation when an entire institution and an entire athletic department, which we've learned as a result of widespread institutional problems permeating various different sports, it's a very, very difficult situation. And we've heard numerous stories about how this was brought to the attention of higher-ups and ignored, or worse, there was retaliation.
I'm talking with Patrick Salvi and Parker Stinar, attorneys for at least one, if not more, clients involved with this Northwestern hazing scandal. Parker, obviously, there's a financial victory that could come from this. That's not going to take care of some of these wounds, obviously. But what do the players hope comes out of this now that they are speaking out?
The number one thing that we hear from the individuals that we've spoken with is they want institutional change. They want change right now at Northwestern. They want change within the athletic department, whether that means additional coaches or trainers are terminated, whether that leads to the termination of the athletic director. They want change. And then on top of immediate change right now, they want these actions to get the attention that they deserve, so that, because the reality is in sports, especially collegiate sports, there's so many former athletes that go on to coach youth sports, high school sports, collegiate sports. And of those individuals don't understand that the conduct and the acceptance within the athletic department was so wrong, it's only going to influence generations to come. So the individuals that we represent, and we represent now dozens of individuals, they want immediate change at the university, and they want this conduct to be addressed, condemned, so future generations don't have to suffer what they have.
I'm not here to defend Pat Fitzgerald. I know Coach from having him on the radio with me for at least a couple of years, if not longer. But I don't know him personally on any level, and you don't know anybody unless you're behind closed doors with them on a day-to-day basis. So I'm not here to defend him. However, is it possible he didn't know about what went on? And does that matter legally at this point, since he always demanded control of the program?
You know, I mean, from the reports that we hear, from the reports that we hear, the individuals we've talked to, there are activities, whether it was hazing, racial discrimination, harassment, that he certainly was aware of. On top of that, there are things that he probably should have known about. Whether he did or didn't, we'll find out through litigation and discovery process. What we do know, based on the 1.5 probably edited executive summary that the university provided, they obviously got the whole investigation. They felt that he needed to be terminated. If he had no knowledge, if he shouldn't have known, what is the reason for them to terminate their head football coach? And I know Pat wanted to follow up with continuing the answer.
Yeah, no, you hit it on the head in terms of the executive summary claiming that Pat Fitzgerald didn't have knowledge but should have, and that was essentially the basis for his termination. But based on the folks that we've spoken with, it doesn't sound like they were asked questions as part of that investigation, because our clients and other people we've spoke with say otherwise. But let's also remember, Pat Fitzgerald was a player back in the mid-'90s, where he was a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year for the entire country on a Northwestern team that was coming out of a major rut where they had not been successful, and then all of a sudden experienced monumental success winning the Big Ten championship. And so he learned under Gary Barnett, and he carried various things forward, and he knows the Northwestern program better than anybody. And so I think that the suggestion that he didn't know, we're going to see if that stands up after we gather all the evidence. But at the same time, while that is an important question and certainly draws a lot of attention because it's the football program and football gets the most attention of any sport, it goes well beyond Pat Fitzgerald. Because if there wasn't a culture of enabling, sweeping things under the rug, fixing things, telling players, hey, look, too bad. You want your Northwestern degree? You want to graduate here? You want to keep your scholarship? We're just going to move on from this. We're not going to do anything about it. That attitude went all the way up, which is why it wasn't just football. And so, yes, Pat Fitzgerald has been, it was kind of the canary in the coal mine when he was first suspended and then terminated, and people were scratching their heads as to, well, wait, what changed? This is kind of strange. Well, now we're seeing that it wasn't just football. We know it was baseball. We know it was cheerleading, softball, volleyball, and just yesterday we also learned of allegations within the lacrosse team. And so I fear that we're just scratching the surface as to how widespread this type of conduct was.
Yeah, I mean, it's an absolute nightmare at Northwestern, and Northwestern alumni I know feel that way as well. But if you did go through this, if your kid went through this, imagine what that was like. And we hope you get to the bottom of this and get to the truth, and we hope we can talk to you again as needed. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us on.
Appreciate it. Patrick Salvi and Parker Stinar, two of the attorneys in this.
Well, you think about this, too. It's not only with Northwestern, but what other universities has this happened at? And does it start the ball rolling in those other athletic departments?
We addressed it with the U of I this morning. I'm telling you, Nick, as we go to traffic here, the butt pucker in athletic departments around the country as they start thinking about, oh, my God, what's going on at our school? If they're not turning the schools upside down and shaking them to see what could fall out at this point, they've already missed the memo.
Right. And look, there's 2 points here real quick that we heard from Lloyd Yates yesterday, a football standout.
Former player, right?
Former player who said that coaches did indeed take part of it, in it. He saw it.
Right.
So whether Pat was there himself, no names were named, but certainly he should have known what his underlings were doing.
And again, he demanded control of the program. He was given control of the program, so the responsibility is his.
Right.
And you need to be in control of the
number
program.
2, you have folks now calling for the firing of Northwestern's president, Michael Schill. Because ultimately, doesn't it fall on him to keep the students safe?
Yeah, buck stops there.
And how many students have come forward? Do we know?
At least a dozen, maybe 15 or so. But there will be more because, as you just heard, there was something going on in almost every
sport.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, it's raining, and it's a bad storm of trouble there. So nice, peaceful on the lake at Evanston. Oof, bad days. But I'm glad to get to the bottom if they had to. Somebody had to be first, and I'm glad those kids did the reporting they did to start the ball rolling at Northwestern.
Yep.